in our program, we are going to recognize the efforts of many, many people who were involved in the campaign to try to save Paseo High, our dear beloved Paseo High School, from destruction. Unfortunately, they were not successful, but it wasn't from lack of trying, that's for sure. Today, we'll have, I'll introduce three people who will be speaking. We have Sharon McCone, who will address you briefly here. Sharon was the principal founder of a group called Friends of Paseo, which worked very hard and valiantly in the campaign. And also we have with us Melissa Wiggins, who was a Paseo teacher at that time in social studies, I believe, and an English college prep course. And she was the primary mentor of a group known as the Paseo 18, which is a group of 18 Paseo students who also campaigned long and hard to try to get the school board to change their mind. So you'll be hearing from those two, and but our principal speaker today is John Kurtz, who was the primary legal attorney for the group and fought very hard to try to use every legal avenue to try to save the school. Also, I know there were many more legal people. There was also an architect who, on a pro bono basis, who drew up a design to present to them for the renovation of the school, which, of course, the school board rejected. Today we'll be video recording the presentation, and we have also some people here from Channel 5, and I'm not sure what their program was going to be, but we'll hope to see a little bit of it on the news anyhow. Without any further chit-chat, I will introduce Sharon McCone, who's going to say a few words in introduction to this.
We started out with just having a speaker, John Kurtz, and when John gets involved in anything, it explodes. So that's why you're in for a real treat. You are witnessing a reunion of the people who helped try to save Paseo. And I thought I would just give you a little bit of background from my memory of saving Paseo, because our memories are a little different now. And I think our emotions cloud that too. The saving of Paseo was a three-pronged effort. It was the Friends of Paseo, and we were losing our physical ties to our memories. There were the students of Paseo with Melissa, and they were the ones who stood to lose the most. And then the lawyer, John Kurtz. He was the one with the big heart. He had the most pressure, and he doesn't like to lose. And I don't like giving speeches. When I learned about the demolition of our majestic Paseo, I really couldn't believe it. So as I thought about it, I thought, well, let's just get this building on the historical register, have it be saved, problem solved, simple. With that in mind, I wrote a letter to the editor of the Star, and I did get some phone calls. And one was from Leela Holmes Caton, class of '76. And she happened to be the younger sister of a girl in our class. And Leela was married to a teacher at Paseo. She was really interested in saving the building, but she was worried about her husband's job with the way the district was behaving at the time. But also from that conversation, I found out there were a lot of people in the neighborhood who wanted to save the building too. So she and I, along with two other classmates, became the core group for Saving Paseo. She would also be our face for interviews. I called the Landmarks Commission to find out what we could do, and they suggested I have a meeting of concerned citizens. So I had about 30 people or so over to our house January 18th, 24 years ago this month. We needed a group to organize, to rally public support. And at that meeting, I thought, well, surely somebody will just take the ball and run with it here. Nobody did. And afterwards, I was talking with the coordinator, Susan Klein. Well, what should we call this group? And she said, just call it Friends of Paseo. And I was working on our class reunion at the time, and I gained two fantastic coworkers. One was Rita Hickman Wilson, who was a very perky, positive person, and she loved to talk, and she had a job that enabled her to talk on the phone. So she was the one who really made thousands of phone calls in this process. She called all the media every time for every event. She called concerned people to get them to the events. She even called the people who were supposed to be at the events to go to the events. And then there was Peggy Stone H, who had the brains and the support. And she could speak on talk radio, which was a plus. So Leela, Rita, Peggy, and I made our core group. I'm so sorry. Next, I called Mr. Klutz, who was a teacher at the school at the time, and he was there when we were there. He wasn't interested, and he gave me the name of Melissa, who said she was working with a group of people, of kids who wanted to save their school. They wanted a school from which they could graduate, and they wanted to stay together. And they had the same problem we did. How do we get the public to do something? And that was clearly, again, the prong to lose the most. Melissa brought some students out to my house, and we tried to see what we could do. And the memory I have from that meeting was that some of these kids had never been out of their neighborhood. Together, with the help of Reverend Emmanuel Cleaver, we had a rally at the Paseo United Methodist Church. And that happened to be my old church, so it was really nostalgic for me. The cheerleaders performed, the students spoke, alumni spoke, and it was on the news. So we really gained support and collected money also. But still, Melissa and I were floundering, and time was running out, and she said, I know a lawyer, but I really hate to call him for pro bono help. And I think John would tell you by divine intervention. At the same time, he saw the students on TV and thought, boy, those kids really need help. So Melissa and John connected, and that's where the whirlwind began. Here was somebody who took the ball and ran with it. With his leadership and his tactics, we did get our public awareness, and Rita had people at the event every time. Some of the things that we had were rallies, marches. We had articles in the newspaper. Tom Bogdan was a writer for The Pitch, and he was a great supporter. And Lynn Horsley was working for The Star and very kind to us, and she was just here. She came and couldn't stay, but I thought that was nice. We did television interviews, and Dave Helling was very gentle with us on interviews. We were on radio talk shows. We were at board meetings for the district. We were at city council meetings. We were at committee meetings. We were at school board candidate rallies because the school board election was going on at that time. We met with Bob Bernstein, class of 56, and tried to brainstorm some strategies. And then we raised money by selling paperweights. Sid Willens, class of 43, who was a lawyer, had that idea, and then he had a daughter who could make them. Some other people who did help us were Collis Bosworth, class of 42, and Bertha Latimer Van Sittert, who was class of 29. And they worked tirelessly spreading the word and raising money. I think Collis went to every class reunion that year and set up his table and sold paperweights. Karen Grigsby, the mother of Kenneth Grigsby, spent hours representing the students in the neighborhood. And Melissa's husband, Will, handed out T-shirts from the trunk of the car and bumper stickers. And Melissa and I were talking, and I said, "Where did Will get those T-shirts?" And Melissa said, "I thought the alums got those T-shirts, so I'm not sure where those T-shirts came from." Patricia Kurtz, John's wife, was a tremendous support. She just loved the building. She was working on her doctorate at Oxford at the time, and I think she liked the connection. And she later ran for the school board, hoping to make some changes, and she won. Melissa had weekend meetings with her students to help them write their speeches and prepare them for those events that I mentioned. And I attended several of those and saw her unlimited devotion, and she was a true teacher. And I taught 33 years, so I've seen some teachers. She was resigning from the district, so she had no fear. And if you noticed the DVD that was going when you came in, you could see how poised those students were in front of the camera. It's just, they did an excellent job. In April, I spoke to the city council to designate it as an historical building. And just days, like 2 days before, Cleaver withdrew his name as a sponsor for that. The Landmarks Commission still supported us. When I spoke, Dr. Patricia McElrath, class of 33, who is founder of the REP at UMKC, spoke, and she told of how great it would be to have an arts magnet in a building with such character. And Tom Devine, the renovation architect, spoke at that time too, and he highlighted the significance of Paseo in the boulevard system, which I'd never thought about. But he said people used to say, well, drive to Paseo and then turn such and such a direction. So after all that time and effort, the Landmarks Commission told us no. They informed us that we couldn't represent Paseo. They said the owners of the property had to represent Paseo to get it on the register. So with that three-pronged effort, we accomplished more than we ever anticipated, and we learned more than we ever anticipated. We still lost the battle, but probably not because of us. It was truly a J.E. Dunn deal. So, and now I have the privilege of introducing you to Melissa, the tireless, fantastic person, teacher, and writer.
Well, I really haven't planned a whole lot to say, and I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible. But someplace in the fall of '89, it became pretty aware to us at Paseo High School that the district had plans to turn the lot into an excavation site. And the students, my students, were part of the college preparatory program, and they had been with me for 3 years. They came into Paseo as kids who wanted to go to college and whose parents were 100% behind that and were willing to do what was ever necessary to get those kids into school. So they would commit to 2 and 3 hours of homework a night. Our kids were taking 4 years of science, 4 years of math, 4 years of English and not reading graphic novels, and 4 years of social studies or history. It was a rigorous program designed to make sure that when they went to college, they wouldn't fail out of college, which the Paseo High School students had been doing in the past. The kids began to talk to me about what's going to happen to us, where are we going to go, what's our future, especially as we are juniors and looking at our senior year. And they asked if I would consider helping them keep Paseo open, or at least ensure that their senior year was not a complete disaster and waste of time. And I can remember over Christmas that Will and I sat and seriously thought about what my future would be in this. But can you turn away from kids you have said all along, you know, education is the most important thing you can get? And we came back in January, maybe December, I'm not quite sure the time frame, but I don't think you care anyway, and agreed that we would present to the school board our concerns about what was going to happen to us. And I had a marvelous group of kids. Donald Frazier, who's sitting here, was the kid that everybody followed. He was the football quarterback. He was the guy that everybody liked. And if Donald said, let's go do it, everybody kind of said, well, yeah, let's go along. Calvin was the kid that sat quietly in the corner and did ROTC, and that was about it. And we'd punch him and move him and say, come on, you can do better, you can work harder. And he was very, very bright, but he was hiding his light under a bushel. Suzette was not part of that group. Suzette, who's over here in the black suit, was the star of Paseo High School. She was the brilliant kid who'd been the brilliant kid from her freshman year. She was always the top of her class. She was the valedictorian that year for the senior class, and she was not facing the same kind of problems that Donald and Calvin were and the other 16. We spoke to the district and we got the cold shoulder. The district had never heard No Child Left Behind. Their saying to us was, somebody's got to pay the price. It's going to be you guys. And what we're going to do is send every single one of you to West High School, where you can be part of the singing and dancing Paseo performing arts school. And for 4 hours of every day, even though you've had this rigorous math and science curriculum, you're now going to sing and dance. There will be no football teams. There will be no ROTC. There will be no cheerleading. All of that's gone, and we're going to bus you across the city, and good luck with your senior year. So Garcia was our superintendent, and he came to the school to present to the students what was going to happen to their future. And we knew pretty well, because we'd been speaking at the board meetings. We knew what kind of response we were going to get. I had a big room on the 3rd floor. And the kids came to me and said, it was the 4th floor, wasn't it? 4th floor. I had a big room on the 4th floor. And the kids came to me and said, you can't go to this assembly, Miss Wiggins. You cannot go. I was like, what? No, why? And they escorted me down where I was watched by another group of teachers while they went down to the assembly. And they proceeded, when Garcia told them, tough luck, this is what's going to happen to you, they walked out. Now, they've just lately told me that they didn't expect the entire room to walk out with them. They just thought it was their walkout. But sure enough, everybody got up and walked out too and went out in the hall. And there was a big sit-in, and the media was called, and the TV channels showed up, and there were pictures all over of the kids holding up Save the School. And and I was sitting upstairs on the 4th floor, had no knowledge any of this was going to happen. But of course, I was blamed. The principals, the district came out, we were all interrogated. How did you get the kids to do this? What did you do? And the next day in the media, in the Kansas City Star, came out this big article about how the white people of Kansas City were convincing the poor black students at Paseo High School that the district was against them, and that their education was not at risk, that they would be fine at West High School, and bringing down the building was just a very good solution. And I can remember we sat in my classroom very silently for about half an hour, and I didn't know what to tell them. And finally I said, you know, back in 1975 or thereabouts, I'd been introduced to this little white boy who showed up at a black church where my husband was minister of music. And we had laughed when he had been introduced as the guy who was going to bring help to the kids of the church. And this guy can't do it. You know, he's a little white guy. What's he going to do in this neighborhood? But we didn't know John at that time. And years later, 25 years, 15 years had passed. We'd lost touch, but we had seen what John had done at this African American church and how he had lived in the community, how he gave his soul to help kids that were underprivileged. And I said to my students, well, I know of a lawyer who has a pretty good rep in the city, and I guess I could call him and ask what else we could do, because I don't know what else to tell you at this point. And we called John, I called John, and John said, I saw you on TV. He saw Cervantes Senneth holding a sign that said, Say Paseo. And Cervantes spoke briefly about how much the school meant to him and what a beautiful building it was and what was going to happen to their education. And John said, my heart was touched when I saw that. So let me come out and just talk to you about what it is we can do. And when he showed up, 2 or 3 days later, he had Terry Barr and Claudia Multaney with him, all in suits, all carrying briefcases. And he came in and he gave us 2 hours of what it was our options were. And then he said, if you really want to go through with this, you'll come down to my law office, Popham Law Office, and we'll talk about it. But you have to show up with your parents, and it'll be on, we'll never meet again on at Paseo High School. We'll meet off-site. And we showed up, I think it was a Saturday, it might have been a Sunday afternoon, but I think it was a Saturday afternoon. And the parents came, and we all sat together, and John told us what was at stake. Not just the building, not just the fact that we were going to lose their senior year of education, but that the district could come back at us and sue us for every single legal cost that they were facing. And those students and parents said, fine, we'll stand up to that. We don't have a problem with that. And then John had all the teachers and administrators and Friends of Paseo leave, and he talked only to the parents of the kids. And the parents said, fine. And then the parents left. And I don't know what went on in that room that afternoon with John and the 18, but I know when they came out of that room, they came out winners.
Thank you, Mark. My name is John Kurtz, and I appreciate the chance to talk to you this afternoon. This was one of the exhibits in that case. You know, it's got an exhibit sticker from the federal courthouse down there, Clerk, U.S. District Court, 92790 and case 77, and so on. And I hope everybody knows how humbling it is for a practicing trial lawyer to come for a commemoration of a case you lost. Everybody understand that? That's a challenge to come to that. I have several people that want to speak to you briefly, along with me trying to be brief also. I just want to say that when I walked into that classroom that day and saw these kids, 3 of whom you will see today and hear today, my heart was totally taken, and I wanted to do anything I could to help those kids. And one thing by way of background, having come from outstate Missouri and moved to Kansas City, as Melissa was talking about, in the mid-'70s, you know, on the TV stations, night after night, the African-American faces of young people that you generally saw were in some type of lineup or in cuffs or something else with the Kansas City Police Department. And I thought, that is not representative of what the urban core that I saw was. There are fine young people there. And the thing that moved me so very deeply about these young people that you see here is that they took advantage of an opportunity to have their sweet and beautiful faces on the television set instead of those others. And it was very inspiring to many, many, many people, certainly starting with me. And so Claudio, I want Claudio to come up, and I think, Claudio, that they're going to, so we don't have to do all that hooking, if you get that thing going. Claudio Multaney is a dear friend of mine, and he and I were together at the Popham Law Firm at that time, and on a rainy day in the morning time, he and I and Terry, who you'll also hear about, went out to Paseo High School to meet some kids and went in and kind of thinking, what are we going to do here? So I'm just going to stand aside and let Claudio describe that first day from his memory as one of the many people who jumped on the bandwagon to help out these young kids.
Well, first of all, it's easy to get on any bandwagon when this is the stage master. This is the man who you walk through fire for. And I learned that early on, being a young lawyer at Popplemoff and working for John Kurtz, that he was not in the practice of law for making money. He was in the practice of law for doing good. And if things financially came rewarding that came from that, so be it. But he was about people and about relationships. And when he told Terry and I about, we need to go over there, we need to take care of these students and this teacher who wants to help them, and what being a teacher and a parent and someone who loves someone is all about. It's all about relationships. And we go to that school, and it was a cold, dank, rainy morning. And kind of the mood was perfect for the clouds of turmoil that were starting to brew and that had been brewing. And we were getting ready for this storm and with this fight. And we walked into that classroom, though, with all these ominous signs and the weather and the atmosphere and all the things that they had already been facing. The one thing you felt was hope. You look at these young people, and it's about hope and about going and taking that challenge up, not to lose a challenge, not to fight and lose, but to do your best and try your best and show people what kids at Paseo High School are all about. And I'm a parent now, and I've got teenagers, and I got high schoolers, and I have told them about what these young people inspired me as a person, and about the relationships that it established in life. Will spoke at my mother's funeral, and what these kids and Melissa and John taught me, and everyone that was touched by this, is that you got to try, and you got to try. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. I'm going to hand the microphone over to John again.
Thank you, Claudio. Ms. Claudio Montaigne. And one of the things that I loved from one of those things that I loved from all that happened back then was how many people jumped up and got on board. And so we thought it'd be really cool if we had 18 students, which we're going to describe some more about moving along quickly here, but to have 18 lawyers. So we went and got 18 lawyers. One of those lawyers is Fred Slough, who I'm asking to come up now, and Fred's going to give you an idea about the kind of people who said, hey, we're signing on for that. And I want to say this, you know, in the Kansas City School District, there was a fair amount of an idea at the time that everybody's in it for money. They're getting phone contracts, they're getting everything else, and so on. All 18 of these lawyers, who Fred's going to describe to you, got nothing except the satisfaction of standing up for these kids. This is Fred Slough.
Hi. I want to say that John got 18 of us to sign on, and but the most important thing to tell you is we didn't do anything. What we did is we endorsed what John was doing, and we put our name on the line with his. But the truth of the matter is, John did the work. But when he did get 18 people, they were 18, in my opinion, quality people. And he made sure that it was female lawyers, male lawyers, black lawyers, white lawyers. As with most anything John ever does, it will be something representative of the community. And I just want to run through these very quickly because I know you've been sitting here patiently. Charles Brown of Fields and Brown, wonderful lawyer. Linda Dicus, who you never wanted to meet in a divorce case. Mike Fatal, who's a great personal injury and I think does a lot of medical malpractice cases. Harold Friedkin, who was Jackson County counselor and a person who's been an advisor to governors, state and federal representatives, is and a very powerful lawyer in town. Larry Gepford Sr., who was a Jackson County prosecutor and a great lawyer. And in fact, when Truman retired, he quit going to political events, but he did come to a fundraiser for Larry Gepford Jr. He made an exception for that event. There was Jim Green, a black lawyer here in town, Leonard Hughes, who's still practicing, Leonard Hughes Jr., who's deceased, but was both a municipal judge and a circuit judge, associate circuit judge, Bruce Jackson Jr., Paul Miller, who's a legal aid lawyer, and he passed on recently, real good guy. A lady named Mimi Moffat, a white lawyer, a lady lawyer who's retired. Ed Pendleton, who some of you may know. Ed was a really good guy, a good African-American lawyer who recently passed on, and he was also a commissioner at the juvenile court, and a fine guy. Karen Ramsey, an African-American lady lawyer who's, I believe, still practicing. John Stapleton Jr., an African-American lawyer who's still practicing, very active. George A. Wheeler, who was a public defender and then out in private practice, and one of the best golfers and basketball players and bowlers that I've ever met. He is really a tremendous athlete. Cecil D. Williams, a guy who made, an African-American lawyer who made going to municipal court an enjoyable thing. He's just one of the funniest and friendliest people you would ever meet. And then finally, a great friend of mine named Russ Millen, who was, he was a United States attorney. He was named by Kennedy to be the U.S. attorney, and he's passed on. He was a very, very fine gentleman. And the only memory I have of being one of these lawyers is I had to go to, John couldn't be there, so I filled in at a deposition. And it was about, they tried to claim that the concrete in this old building wasn't good enough and it was going to fall apart, the building was going to fall apart. And John got experts to come down there and testify about the quality of the concrete. Now me, knowing nothing about the quality of concrete, I was scared to death. I wouldn't know what to do. But fortunately, John showed up before we really had to do anything except have a body there, like me. Okay? So anyway, I was just so proud that John did ask me, and generally speaking, if John asked you to do something, it's something you would want to do.
I appreciate that, and you know, it's just thrilling to me to be out there at Paseo High School, and I remember Gepford and Millen came, Jackson County prosecutor and U.S. attorney with ties to Harry Truman and John F. Kennedy, and for those people to come and be tied up with these kids, I mean, I thought that was really great stuff. I want to ask Terry Barr to come up now, and Terry at that time was about 21 years of age. She is my goddaughter from age 8 on. She now works for Senator Claire McCaskill as an assistant to her. And so I'll lay the groundwork for the story is that when we were meeting with those kids, I said, here's something I'd like for you to do. And I got to say, in the back of my mind, I wasn't sure they'd do it. I mean, I want you to march from 4747 Flora downtown. And then I want you to serve papers on the superintendent of schools, and I want you to go over to the federal courthouse and file something, the state courthouse and file something. And these kids said, okay, we'll do it. Now I need somebody to lead that march, and that's Terry Barr, who will tell you the story of a group of some 20, 30 people marching all the way downtown. Terry, if you tell that story, please.
Wow. Okay, 18 lawyers. That means, Terry, how many copies? How many copies do you need? Let's see, that's original plus 3 for the court. 18 lawyers, 500. That was with everything. How many copies do you need? 1,000. Okay, what is it that you need me to do? Well, we're going to go to PaseoAlliance High School. I don't think we can help them. This is what I remember. But let's just go and listen and see what they have to say. But, you know, I just don't think there's anything we can do. How many copies? 2,000. I did not graduate from Paseo, and I'm kind of sad about that because at first I am a Kansas Missouri School District graduate, and they were rivals, and so I thought, Paseo, I didn't graduate from Paseo. Why am I doing this? And so walking to Paseo and meeting all those people and seeing a face that I remember, my godmother, Melissa. Melissa, I think you did a wonderful job. I know you did, and we're all so proud of you. So I just wanted to say that. Okay, the march. John said yes. We're going to serve these people. How are we going to get there? You're going to walk. John, Paseo's on 47th Street. He wants to walk to 12th Street. He said, yeah, I meant to 9th Street. Okay, I don't think they're going to go for this. But all of these kids said, oh yeah, we'll do it. And not only did those 18 kids show up, 30, there had to be more than 100 of us standing in front of Paseo, waiting to walk downtown and serve the Kansas City School District and the courts. The police showed up, and I must admit, I was like, oh man, we're in trouble. The police is here. There's a lot of black people out here. And then 2 horses showed up, and somebody stuck a Save Paseo sticker on the horse's butt. We're in so much trouble. But every time we tried to remove that sticker, the police officer would position the horse so that we couldn't take the sticker off the horse's butt. Which was so cool, because that those horses followed us all the way to the court, all the way into the school district where we served the superintendent, where we served the courts, federal and state. So I'm proud of you kids. Thank you all for your help, and yeah, we lost.
Thank you, too. One of the really cool memories in that, because Melissa mentions Garcia, the superintendent, George Garcia, is, and I think this was captured on camera, is that Terry was there with these papers with all the students back behind her, so on, to serve these papers, and George Garcia, the superintendent, kind of came around the corner and, whoa, went back like that. And, whoa, what's this? So, and that was on TV cameras that evening, and I personally got a big charge out of that. And so, I know we're already running a little long, but we got some of the most important stuff coming up right now. I want to pay my tributes to Melissa and Will Wiggins. I had met them in church work, as she talked about, in the 1970s. And so here I was meeting them again and saw the caliber of teaching that she gave to these students and the relationship that she had with those students. And I loved it, and I treasured it, and I honor you, Melissa, for every bit of that. And her husband has the most magnificent voice, so I somehow, for some unknown reason, got a theme song, which is "You'll Never Walk Alone." And for this deal, and Melissa said to me, you know, "You'll Never Walk Alone" has absolutely nothing to do with the Urban Corps or Paseo High School or anything else related to what we're doing here. And I said, yeah, but man, I love hearing your man sing. But the words of that, when you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. You know, these kids were getting the short end from the Kansas City School District. And so here they were, and here she is leading them on a march all the way downtown. And you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. And I just thought for them to hear that a whole bunch of times when they're going from being in a classroom to suddenly here's a bunch of cameras and things in their face, I thought it was a great thing. And I thank Will for saying that probably 25, 30 times during the course of that whole thing. It was absolutely beautiful. When I put in this program the most important people of all, and I hope the rest of us have not talked too long because these folks have important things to say to you. Donald, would you come first? He is so nice to come over here from St. Louis, Missouri, and he is now in, yes. He is now in educational administration himself, and so what I asked these folks to do was and if you grab that microphone there, to come and tell you something about their memory of the overall Save Paseo, the Paseo 18, keeping the class together, keeping the building up, and also what they've done in their lives so that all the rest of you Paseo graduates can be deeply proud of these folks who went, in his case, all but 1 year to Paseo High School. This is Donald Frazier.
How you doing, everyone? When John emailed and asked me to come, I was elated. And I spoke with John, I spoke with Baylor, and I also spoke with Melissa the same day. And I was thinking about it, I was sitting there and I'm like, will it be worth my time? And I thought, that is something that is a huge case. I was part of a federal case. I sat in front of a federal judge and no one knows about it. I've been in administration 17 years. I mean, well, not administration, but I've been teaching for 17 years. And I've never sat and told my students the full story about any of it. And so it's kind of funny when I'm driving down there and I'm thinking, why haven't I ever said anything about it? And I think because we lost. I think it opens up a lot of wounds, though, when you sit and talk about it. And so John asked to share some memories about it. And I remember, as we said, the superintendent came down to speak with the student body. And we just did not, he reneged on the deal. And basically, when we were freshmen, they said they were going to keep the building open until we graduated, and they changed in full stride. And so we weren't happy about it, and we decided to walk out. We had no idea that the whole student body was going to walk with us, and it just took off from there. I remember we were sitting in class, and we were speaking with Ms. Wiggins about what can we do, and you know, people say you're going to sue, but no one ever thinks, really as a child, saying what it takes to sue somebody. We said that. But that was about it. In comes Mr. Kurtz, and I mean, we could see some light here. At first, it was just a doomsday, and you know, you're literally fighting for your life. I don't think we ever thought about that, but really, you know, it's literally you're fighting for your life at that age because you don't know what the future will bring. And so, thank you, Mr. Kurtz, for coming out. Thank you, Ms. Wiggins, for sticking with us. I owe so much to Ms. Wiggins, and I will get to that. But my fondest memory was serving the school board. I remember that night, myself and Janaea, we were there, and we had to speak. And I remember we worked hard trying to get the speech down to 2 minutes or so. 2 or 3 minutes, I know that was the limit. And so you had to say what you had to say. And so I remember I went first, and I had the subpoenas. And I remember walking over to the school board members. They were sitting there in a row, and I could see it. And I was flopping it down. And, you know, I had anger, and it was kind of showboating. John did a great job of coaching us up, is all I have to say. So then, during my speech, I got a little fiery, and you know, facial expression and everything. And I remember I put this scowl on, and I was slopping them down. And Janaea was giving her speech, and I remember we ended up going to Southwest High School. The next year, one of the cheerleaders. She was a senior. We were working on the senior float. Her dad was on the school board member. He was a school board. And he walked up to me and he goes, I don't think you remember me, do you? And I kept looking. I knew the name, but I could not place him at that time. And he goes, I remember I didn't like you very much. He said, I didn't like you very much. And he said, you gave me a subpoena that night. And I'm like, oh. And I was, you know, we're sitting at his house. I'm sitting at his dinner table. We're eating snacks. And you know, and I told him, I said, it never was personal. You know, and he, you know, we kind of laughed and joked about it. But he ended up being a pretty cool guy after the end of it. But that was my fondest memory of the Paseo thing, is that we're slapping subpoenas on them. And also the walk. I remember we were walking, and we had these Save Paseo stickers, and we were running on every car that would let us. We were out in the street, and we would slap a Save Paseo sticker on it. It was so great that everybody, no one said no. You know, it didn't matter what kind of car it was. It didn't matter. I remember one guy said, just don't put it on my paint, put it on the bumper. So that was it. But everybody was so supportive, and I want to thank you guys. Looking back on it, there was a lot of work behind the scenes that some of us never knew about. Well, I didn't know about consciously, but I appreciate it. Mr. Kurtz, I want to thank him, but I want to get to Ms. Wiggins real quick. Ms. Wiggins taught me so much, and she was my English teacher. I didn't like English. I had to say it, I didn't like English, but she was great. I'm in education now, and I wish I had the teachers that she was at that time. It was, you know, and I remember when I was teaching, she used to put us in groups, and I remember you didn't want to be. We would change every week. Every week we walk in, we'd be in different groups. And I remember certain tables, and sometimes you knew how the groups were, and other times you didn't. But you'll look around the people at the table and you'll be like, oh, I'm in the wrong group. I must have, you know, if you didn't study based off of groupings, you didn't want to be in that group. And I remember everybody was trying not to be at the last table, or whatever she called it that week. And you know, that instilled in us, there was never any put downs or anything like that, but it instilled in you a certain desire that that's not where you want to be. And so you always want to be at the head, you never want to be a tail. And so I think that instilled in us the fight the school district about something that we knew we were not going to win. It has a lot to say, and I think my dad probably spoke with you about this before. My dad, if you understand, he would tell you straight up. Straight guy, didn't pull a lot of punches. And so if you knew him, great guy, but he would tell you the truth. And so going into it, one of the things was that in our minds, we didn't think we were going to win, but it was the fight, it was the struggle. And so I thank you guys so much for Claudio, Terry, Will. I remember, you know, so many different things about it, but it's the fight that went on. And I thank you guys so much for sending me the fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald, very much. He's a graduate of William Jewell College, and then in educational administration, as you have heard about. And I'm going to call Calvin Wells in just a minute, but I wanted to take a moment for one story in between, which is this. There were two prongs what we were talking about. One was to save the building, and the second one was to save the class, so that they could stay together as a class. And there's a wonderful PhD in Kansas City named Dr. Susan Wilson, who on a last-minute notice, and she's came to testify then, she's an assistant dean today at the UMKC School of Medicine. And so we were testifying about the importance of that class of students being allowed to go to school together and to graduate together. And she was giving psychological testimony about that. And there was a question that came up that I particularly resented and was one of the most heartfelt, disgusting things that happened. A question was asked of her, well, can you explain how come it is that the average scores and so on for the students at Paseo High School are the lowest in the district? And she started to give an answer, that, and then the person cut her off from giving the answer. Two things happened in between. Somebody came up to me, one of the parents came up to me and said, here's the thing, Paseo has magnificently bright students, but Paseo also is a school where the district puts people who don't fit into their magnet program. And consequently, that brings down some scores, and they knew that. And here were these kids sitting there with them okay, Sharon, you're not alone now. Here are these kids sitting there with that type of insult going on. Well, Susan Wilson, later, when I got back up, I said, ma'am, you started to give an answer to a question earlier about test scores and certain things and so on. Did you want to expand on that? She said, yes, I'd like to. And her answer began with something like this. I think we ought to start with this. The ancestors of some of these children were basically all subjected to the peculiar institution of American slavery. And you know, that courtroom got real quiet, as it should have at that point. And she went forward from there to Paseo being the last all-black high school in Kansas City. Now, Melissa told you about the situation where there were some people saying, oh, there's a bunch of white Paseo graduates who are linking up with these black kids and trying to put bad thoughts in their mind. I got to say, when the TV stuff started, and you just heard Donald and Terry talking about that march downtown, that was all over. That was all over. Everybody was on board with these young people. Everybody was, and knowing that they were tremendous young people. And so I now call one more of the most important people of all in this whole thing, and that's Mr. Calvin Wells, to come up, and I'd ask him to tell you something about his memories and his life.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've had to speak in public. Donald, you went over your 2 minutes. My fondest memory of the struggle was the march. The march began with me making a speech, and it's written in your program. It's "Remember Who You Are," and it was I wrote that speech in response to how Anita Hill, or school district representative, turned on us. Julia Hill, yes. She turned on us after she became school board president. And it so angered me that I had to respond somehow, some way, and it came out publicly. And that was one of my fondest memories. The march, putting Paseo bumper stickers on billboards and vehicles where people would let us. And being in the Miss Wiggins class, we would often have to go up and recite scenes from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. And that's probably where we got most of our poise and our ability to speak in public and not to be nervous. And, we got a lot of that from Miss Wiggins. Let's see, Servente Suddeth, who couldn't be here, is one of my closest friends, as well as Donald Frazier. And almost all the kids in Miss Wiggins' classes, we still connect today. We're either Facebook friends or we communicate over the telephone, but we keep in touch. And the struggle brought us a lot closer, I think. I mean, we had been going to school together, a lot of us since grade school, because we grew up in the same neighborhoods. And we went to junior high together, but Paseo was, Paseo was the only high school I ever wanted to go to. I had 3 older sisters, they all graduated from Paseo. And I was born a pirate. I would go to Paseo football and basketball games as a 5-year-old kid. And I would be used as bait by my older sisters to, if they liked a boy, they're like, Calvin, go over there and grab his leg. So I'd go grab a leg, and they'd come over, Calvin, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing what you told me to. I would just, you know, that was an icebreaker for them. So I was used, but that's what little brothers are for. Currently, I am reinventing myself. I was working for 16 years in the casino industry. I was working in Detroit, was laid off last year. Came back to Kansas City in July because it's home. My family's here. I mean, everyone's here. I was the only person in Detroit that I grew up with or that was in my family. So decided to come back home, and I'm currently enrolled in DeVry University to get into the tech field because it's a booming industry. And that's where I am right now. But yeah, Paseo, whenever anyone asks me, what high school did you go to, or what high school did you graduate from? I would never say Southwest, because I'm a Paseo pirate. Born and raised Paseo pirate. Let's see, the school district sent me to Central first, and at Central High School, I was like the only one of the Paseo 18 there, besides Quentin Garner. And didn't usually hang out with him, but I had to at the time. So I had to transfer because I felt like a freshman. And I was a senior, just walking around the hallways. No one knew me. I didn't know very many people. But my first day at Southwest, I'm walking through the halls, and everyone's, Calvin, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And this, that's what your senior year is supposed to be like. And they tried to take that away from me. But, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Janaea Clarkson could not be here, but she wrote the following. She now lives in Texas, and she was one of the great students in this class. Let me read this to you as quickly as I can, although Baylor Edwards came up here and told me, don't worry about the time. So I want you to know that. I have a lot of fond memories of that time. One memory that comes to my mind is the board meeting where I spoke. The topic that evening was brochures that were being sent out regarding all the wonderful things the Kansas City, Missouri School District had to offer with all of its new magnet programs. None of the Paseo students received these brochures. They were only sent to out-of-district students. The Paseo students were never considered in the recruiting process, even though our senior class was being displaced. As I said above, this was one of so many memories. The walkout, the march, all the Saturday meetings with Mr. Devine. I learned so much about, and listen to this list of things, politics, organized protest, public speaking, and working closely with a diverse group of people. I've used these skills in college and in my career paths. And she most recently was a public benefits coordinator at North Hills Hospital in North Richmond Hills, Texas. And I got a picture of her with her wedding and of her new child. And Kendra, would you come up and help pass these out for me? Kendra, what year did you graduate from Paseo?
2005.
I think this is the most recent Paseo graduate. Kendra, tell me your last name again.
Burgess.
Kendra Burgess, would you give her a round of applause? would you? And she also works in Senator McCaskill's office. And so now, Suzette, would you come up and just stand beside me? One of the things that I said to Melissa is, I want kids out of your class, I want the best you got, and so on. And so here were these kids, these magnificent kids, and so on. And you hear about there were some notorious things like the Chicago 7 and so on. I wanted to name it a group. I wanted the PaseoAlliance 20 originally because I thought that'd be cool. SAC 20, the Social Action Committee of 20, was a great inner city organization. We couldn't get 20, we got 18. But it's my recollection, I said to Melissa, I want the valedictorian of the last graduating class of the old Paseo, original Paseo High School. And the next thing I knew, here was Suzette Naylor. So, she is so shy, but you will. I can ask you about 3 questions, can't I?
I'll say a few words.
You're going to say it, okay. Oh, okay, because I got to tell you this story, Suzette. When Baylor Edwards got a hold of me and wanted to kind of get together, I started thinking, well, I want other people in this, not just me, under no circumstances, just me. And so I called Suzette and I said, Suzette, there's this thing January 27th coming up. Would you be able to go? And she said, yeah. I said, also, they're coming down in about 3 days. Maybe if I could just get you on the phone, I've sounded, I'm certain, so pathetic. And so she said to me, and here's the best way I can imitate it, John, do you want me to come down? It was such a thrill to be mothered by this young lady, and so I greatly appreciate the chance to come. Suzanne, go right ahead, please.
I truly am a behind-the-scenes person, so I usually don't have to get up and speak and don't offer to speak unless I'm doing it for my job purposes. But I didn't want to pass up this opportunity to say a few words to those involved in this effort. And John asked you to do something. I think someone said earlier, you just do it. You really do. I'm sure a lot of people in this room, if you know John personally, you just become indebted to him in a way. In a good way, you just feel like he gives so much that any little thing you could do for him, you would want to do. Well, what I wanted to say as I was hearing everyone speak is what the effort kind of brought out for me. And I think Claudio spoke about relationships, and it truly brought some great relationships into my life. And I don't think you will have ever experienced life if you haven't experienced someone providing service to you, a sacrificial service to you. And there were so many involved in this effort that did just that. And I truly believe the essence of life is to offer and to give to others. And that's what I saw happen in this effort. Donna spoke that behind the scenes there was so much going on that we probably just wasn't truly aware of. And I know from all those involved that personal sacrifices were made and financial sacrifices were made, professional sacrifices were made. And we just want to say we really appreciate and thank you for that. As an adult, I can understand how time is precious, and I go through my day, and it's hard to fit everything in, so I'm not exactly sure how those who decided to help the PaseoAlliance were able to find it in their schedules to help us in that effort with dealing with your family and professional relationships and everything you have going on. So in that, I just want to say thank you. I would like to say that I suppose I have a position and a title, and I'm sure that's great and all, but the most important thing that I really have loved about the PaseoAlliance and that effort is the relationships and the push that it gave me to be whoever I am today. And that is because of John and Terry and Claudio and Melissa and Will and so many others. One thing I'd like to share, after we left Paseo, Janae and I had the awesome pleasure of working with John in his law office. He brought us in and allowed us to work in an office setting and work as professionals. We did copying, but we also went to depositions. We saw so much of the legal work working with Terry and Claudio and John, and that really set us up to really be in professional environments and to work in environments where we're interacting with so many different people. It also gave me an opportunity to really, because I was the senior, so I was really just a support for the voices of the juniors, but it gave me an opportunity to know Janae a little bit more, and we became closer, and as a result became roommates after we left Paseo, at some point working with John. my college experience came about in a way that was because of Melissa, of Mrs. Wiggins, and she was so much more than a teacher, as you have heard before. She made an investment in our lives, as so many of you did with that effort. When I was a senior in high school, I had taken all the math and science that you can take in high school. And Mrs. Wiggins came in and said, you know, we should do something about that. You should still be moving forward, although you're still in high school. So somehow or another, she connected me with some individuals that were taking college courses. It was another high school. I don't remember if it was Bishop Hogan. Students, they were taking high school math and college at Rockhurst College. And so my senior year in high school, I was taking chemistry and algebra at Rockhurst College and earning college credits. So that was my first introduction to high school. And I don't know if she knows this today, but although I was graduating as the valedictorian of high school and I was deemed to be a superstar, I didn't really have much focus or direction. I hadn't had any college graduates before me in my family. And so me entering that atmosphere in my senior year of high school kind of set me up for, oh, maybe I should go to college. I didn't have aspirations beyond high school. I planned to just get a job, you know, working in government or working at post, whatever you do after you leave high school without having a college degree. That's what my plan was. Get a job. When you grow up in an environment where your parents are on disability or Social Security, you want to graduate and just make any little money you can, not only for yourself, but to help your family. But that put me in a mindset of goals and put me in a mindset of, oh, maybe I should explore options of college because I was placed in that environment. And as a result, I graduated and went on to continue to pursue my education at Rockhurst College. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, John. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Claudio. Thank you, Will. Thank you, everyone who helped us to be who we are today.
I know you're going to find this difficult to believe. That young lady told me she didn't want to say anything. That's why I asked her just to stand beside me. I don't have anything to say, she said. I mean, that's real modesty. My God, that's fantastic. I'm going to talk on just a few things, and I hope we've thanked everybody, and I think we're working toward the end of it. But I wanted to say what we did was we intervened in. We had a group called the Students of Paseo High School. That was the name of the group. Technically, we intervened in the federal desegregation case. Judge Russell Clark entered an order, much to my surprise, that Sue Fulson on the school board, when we're sitting there one night, she comes over and hands me this and doesn't say one word, just hands me an order that Judge Clark has just entered. And that order, see, we won partially, that order said, stop the demolition of Paseo High School. You got 90 days to present an alternative plan. Go do it. So Russell Clark did that. I also heard that Russell Clark has said to someone before he passed, and I think he was a wonderful man, that the one thing he regretted more than anything else was ordering the destruction of Paseo High School. For a little bit of humor in this thing, I wanted you to recall this. Imagine this. It's the only time it's ever happened to me. We're in the middle of this case. I'm asking a question, and the lawyer, one of the other lawyers, I think Assistant Attorney General, stands up and makes a rather vociferous objection. I don't hear a ruling. I look up, and I do love Russell Clark, but he was asleep at the particular time that was being made. And so now, here's a lawyer standing there having made this objection, and me standing there. And I looked and I thought, what do you do? Hey, excuse me. Over here. So I withdrew the question, asked another question. We went on. He woke up. It all came out okay. One other humorous thing in the thing was, and Sharon's already made reference to it, the Dunn deal thing. See, J.E. Dunn was the company that was getting ready to build the new school and all that, with lots of money involved. One of their employees was testifying and said that as far as he was concerned, it was already a done deal. And I'm sure he was saying D-O-N-E, D-E-A-L. But what we did later was, of course it was a done deal. Doggone right, it was a D-U-N-N deal that led to that thing taking place. Here's one upshot, two more things I want to give. Kendra, would you come back up? Here's, there's not enough for everybody, but here's some of the things from April 8th, 1990 that have, there's these students. And then one other upshot of all this was this deal right here. My wife giving up 8 years of her life to serve on the Kansas City, Missouri School Board. Maybe Terry, would you give her some of those. She gave 8 years of her life because she did not like the way these kids, young people, students had been treated. She did not like the way Melissa had been treated. And I suppose she didn't like the way I'd been treated either. And so what I wanted to start the finishing of it is this. When you get old like me and a lawyer, been around a long time, you have some favorite memories and so on. And you've heard about a whole bunch of them, but I'm going to give you one of the very favorites. Having the lawyers like Fred Slough and Claudio and the group of 18 working on it, knowing these young people is fantastic. Following up with Melissa's students and with Melissa was all magnificent. My favorite moment in the whole thing was the day that we started the case. And the 18 kids were out there in the hall. And I know Sharon, I think Mark and Rita and a whole bunch of PaseoAlliance graduates, I think all Caucasian, were in the courtroom to watch. And so I kind of wanted these kids to kind of march in there too. So in we marched with these kids, with those people supporting those kids. And I'll tell you, in that same time frame, the movie Glory had just been released. And Glory, let me read you a little bit about it. You're going to start to pick up what happened because, let me read it. It was a 1989 film starring Matthew Broderick, Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman. Stories based on the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry, the first formal unit of the United States Army to be made up entirely of African American men. It premiered in limited release in the United States on February 16th, 1990. And so it was just out when this thing happened. At the end of that movie, there's an assault on Fort Wagner. And what had happened was there had been efforts to put the black troops into combat because they wanted to be into combat. And the scene is, at the very end of this movie, these black soldiers are marching into combat. And the white soldiers are on either side of them. And as it is written up this way, as his troops marched into battle, the supporting white brigades, who had been skeptical of black soldiers, hollered out, "Give them hell, 54th." At dusk, Shaw, the commander, personally leads his men in a charge upon the fort under heavy fire. As they attempt to advance under cover of darkness, they become pinned down. They rally. They lost. They lost, you see. After marching through that, they lost. And the film's epilogue reveals that Fort Wagner was never taken, but notes that news of the regiment's courage spurred the recruitment of more than 180,000 African American volunteers, a fact which President Lincoln considered instrumental in the Union's eventual victory. That's pretty dramatic stuff, but I will just tell you that in all the time of being a lawyer around, I can't imagine a prouder moment than walking into that courtroom with a bunch of you all supporting them and with these young people being the ones who are leading the charge, whose courage inspired me then, inspires me now. And so, here's the way I'd like to finish. We don't have anything else, do we? We're ready to finish? I'd like for you all at that table to stay seated, and I'd like everybody else to stand up and give them a standing ovation.